The jungle was silent, except for the low hum of distant creatures hiding in the dark. Ethan Cross moved carefully through the thick undergrowth, his boots sinking into the damp soil. His body ached from days of walking since the crash. The sun had set hours ago, leaving the alien forest glowing faintly under its own strange bioluminescence. Thin vines curled like snakes, and flowers pulsed with soft light, breathing out a sweet but dangerous scent. He clutched his pulse rifle tightly. Though he had only a few rounds left, he told himself he could survive, that he just needed one more day, one more chance. Then he heard it, a sound so small it almost disappeared under the whisper of the wind. A weak cry, high and broken, carried through the trees like a secret. Ethan froze. It didn't sound like any predator he had heard before. It didn't sound like anything dangerous. It sounded like a baby. He hesitated. Every instinct told him to keep moving. This planet was cruel. Its beauty was a trap. But the sound came again, softer this time, like someone too tired to keep calling for help. Against his better judgment, he followed it. Each step was slow, careful, his senses sharp for any sign of a trap. The cries led him to a hollow log near a cluster of glowing plants. At first, he saw nothing. Then his eyes caught movement. A tiny shape pressed deep inside, shivering. Ethan crouched and lowered his rifle, peering in. It was a creature unlike anything he had seen before. Small enough to fit in his hands, its skin was pale silver with faint blue veins glowing beneath. Two huge eyes, brighter than stars, stared back at him. They weren't wild or hateful. They were scared, terrified. The creature let out a weak sound again, like a whimper. Ethan noticed a jagged cut across its side, bleeding a strange dark liquid. That shimmered in the dim light. It was hurt, dying. Something in his chest twisted. He had seen too much death since his crash friends gone. His ship torn apart, the endless fight to survive. He couldn't leave this tiny thing to die alone. Slowly he reached in, hands open to show he meant no harm. The creature flinched, but didn't move away. When his fingers brushed its skin, it was warm, trembling like a fragile bird. Gently, he lifted it out. It weighed almost nothing, yet its heartbeat thumped hard against his palm. "Easy," he whispered, though he knew it couldn't understand. "You're safe now." He carried it back to the small shelter he had built from broken pieces of his escape pod. The jungle outside groaned with life, full of shadows and eyes. Inside, he laid the creature on his sleeping pad and rummaged through his emergency kit. He had one water pouch left, half a ration bar, and a med gel injector. He pressed the gel over its wound, watching as the cut sealed slowly, a strange liquid drying into a faint shimmer. The creature twitched, but didn't fight. When it opened its eyes again, they were clearer, glowing faintly in the dark. Ethan tore a piece of ration bar and held it near its mouth. For a moment, it only stared. Then, with a small click, it bit. The food, its tiny teeth scraping his fingers. He smiled despite himself. Hungry little thing, huh? Hours passed. The jungle whispered outside, but for the first time in days, Ethan felt something like peace. The creature curled against him for warmth, its small body pressing close like it trusted him completely. He stared at the ceiling of his shelter, his hand resting gently on its soft skin. He didn't know what it was, what species, or why it was alone. All he knew was that he couldn't abandon it. He had lost too much already. He wouldn't lose this. As sleep pulled at his eyes, the jungle fell quiet to quiet. Something was moving out there, something big. The glow of plants flickered as if a shadow passed over them. Ethan's hand tightened on his rifle, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. In the distance, eyes gleamed in the darkness, watching. The creature in his arms shifted slightly, letting out a faint sound, almost like a warning. Ethan held it closer, staring into the black jungle beyond his shelter. Far away, hidden between the trees, another shape crouched low. Its body was sleek and black, its jaw lined with curved blades. It watched Ethan through slitted eyes, its hunger sharp and patient. The scent of alien blood, was fresh in the air. It would wait for the right moment to strike. Inside the shelter, Ethan whispered again, softer this time, almost to himself. "You'll be safe now." He didn't know how wrong he was. Ethan woke to the sound of bone snapping. For one breath, he thought he was dreaming. Then came the wet crunch and the smell, raw, metallic, sharp as rust. Something was feeding close. He rolled silently, hand reaching for his rifle. The glow outside his shelter flickered as heavy shapes moved between the trees. Shadows slid across the walls like hunting ghosts. He pressed his ear against the metal panel and froze at the sound of claws scraping wood and stone. Not one creature. Many. He looked down at the small alien curled against his chest. It was still asleep, breathing softly, its tiny body warm under his jacket. Ethan didn't want to move it. But then came another sound, a low growl, so deep the ground seemed to hum. His fingers tightened on the rifle grip. He pulled the creature close, slipping it inside his jacket as he crouched low and aimed toward the doorway. The first attack came like a storm. A sleek predator crashed through the vines, black as midnight, its limbs like curved blades, its jaws snapping with teeth that could shear metal. Ethan fired without thinking. The shot burned a hole through its head, and the body slammed against the shelter, rattling the walls. He barely had time to breathe before two more shapes lunged from the dark, their eyes glowing green in the flickering light. Ethan emptied the rest of his rounds, each blast lighting the night with fire. Screeches tore through the air. A tail slashed across his arm, ripping through his sleeve and flesh. Pain shot white-hot up his nerves, but he didn't stop. The creatures fell one by one, their bodies twitching on the ground. Silence returned, thick and heavy. Ethan's pulse thundered in his ears. His rifle clicked empty. He tossed it aside and dragged the door closed, using what little strength he had to shove debris against it. His arm burned where the claws had cut deep, blood soaking his jacket. He looked down at the small alien Lyra. He didn't know why he called her that, but the name felt right. She blinked up at him with those star-bright eyes, and for a second, the fear and exhaustion faded. Then she did something strange. She climbed out of his jacket and stood on his chest, her tiny claws pricking his skin gently. Her head tilted, as if studying his wound. Then slowly she opened her mouth and let out a sound, not a cry this time, but a sharp, piercing note that made Ethan's ears ring. The air seemed to vibrate. Somewhere in the distance, something answered a shriek, like splitting metal, then silence again. Lyra crawled to his arm and pressed her small hands to the cut. Ethan felt warmth spreading, the pain dulling. He stared as the bleeding slowed, the skin knitting at the edges. Not fully healed, but enough to keep him alive. Ethan sat frozen, watching her glowing eyes. She wasn't just some fragile creature. There was power inside her, raw, dangerous. She looked up at him then, her small face softening, almost proud. He laughed once, a short, breathless sound. "What are you?" he whispered. She didn't answer, of course. She just curled against him again, as if saving his life meant nothing to her, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. He ate the last of his ration bar and gave her the bigger piece. She snapped it up eagerly, sharp little teeth flashing before her mouth closed like nothing had happened. He stroked her back, feeling the faint vibration of her purr. The shelter smelled of blood and burned flesh, but in that quiet moment, it felt like the safest place in the universe. Hours later, Ethan drifted into uneasy sleep. Outside, the jungle hissed with whispers. Shapes moved in the blackness, circling, waiting. And deep in the trees, far beyond where human eyes could see, something else heard Lyra's cry. Something older, larger, with the same glowing veins and the same predatory grace. It turned its head toward the human camp and began to move. Back. Inside the shelter, Lyra opened her eyes in the dark. They glowed brighter than before, as if fire lived inside her now. She crawled to the edge of the shelter and stared out at the forest. Her tiny claws scraped against the metal floor. Ethan slept on, unaware. Lyra tilted her head and let out a low sound, a whisper of something primal. Then, quick as a shadow, she slipped into the night. When Ethan woke, the space beside him was empty. The only sign of her was a trail of tiny prints leading into the jungle, smeared with blood-fresh blood that wasn't hers. Asterisk. Blood dripped from the leaves like rain. It splashed softly onto Ethan's face as he pushed through the undergrowth, his breath loud in his ears. For a second, he thought it was his own blood until he looked up. The branches above him were smeared red, thick drops sliding down like tears from the jungle itself. His stomach clenched. Lyra's tiny prints were still fresh on the ground, but now they were mixed with something else, deep claw marks, gouged into the soil. Whatever happened here wasn't small. Lyra! His voice broke the heavy silence, sharp and desperate. No answer came, only the far-off echo of something moving fast. He gripped his knife, the only weapon he had left, and ran. His lungs burned, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. She was all he had left in this godforsaken world. The sound of Enda's tearing flesh reached him first. Wet, ugly, like fabric ripping, but louder. Then came a low growl, rumbling deep, not from a throat that should belong to something that small. Ethan slowed, heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst. He crept forward, pushing aside glowing ferns, until he saw it. The corpse lay twisted across the clearing. One of the predator's sleek, black, armed with blade-like limbs, torn open from chest to tail. Its head was gone, ripped clean off, spine dangling like a broken chain. And crouched over the body, bathed in silver. Light from the glowing plants was Lyra, tiny Lyra, but she didn't look so tiny now. Her back arched as she tore at the carcass, her claws buried deep into muscle. Her teeth gods, those teeth, were longer, sharper than before, gleaming as they sank into flesh. Blood ran down her small face, dripping off her chin. Her eyes glowed like molten metal, burning in the dark. She didn't even notice Ethan at first. She was lost in hunger, in something primal. Lyra. His voice was barely a whisper. She froze. Slowly, her head turned, and for one breath, he wasn't looking at the fragile creature he saved. He was looking at a predator, pure and merciless. The stare held him like chains. Then, suddenly, it was gone. Lyra blinked, and her eyes softened. She let out a sound small, almost like a whimper, and ran to him, blood dripping from her mouth. Ethan caught her on instinct. Her little body pressed to his chest, trembling. Not with fear, with something else. Energy. Power. Her claws scraped against his jacket, leaving deep marks in the fabric. She buried her face against him as if seeking comfort, but her breath was hot and sharp, her tiny muscles coiled like steel cables. Ethan held her close, feeling her heartbeat pounding wild against his skin. He wanted to comfort her, but his hands shook. He stared at the dead predator behind her, its massive frame lying broken like paper. Lyra had done that dot. He carried her back to the shelter, every step heavy with questions. How could something so small do that? What was she becoming? Was she even the same creature he found in that hollow log? When they reached the shelter, He cleaned her with a rag, wiping blood from her silver skin. She sat still, watching him with glowing eyes, calm now, almost innocent. Like nothing had happened. Like she wasn't a killer. When she finished eating the last of his rations, she curled against him again, just like before. Ethan stroked her back, but his hand trembled. He remembered the way she looked in the clearing, the way her teeth tore through flesh, the sound of bones snapping in her jaws. He told himself she was just surviving, like him. But deep down, fear gnawed at him. Not fear of her hurting him. Fear of what the galaxy would do if it ever found her. Outside, the jungle was silent again. Too silent. Even the predators were gone now. Ethan stared into the dark, listening to his own breathing. He thought about the carvings he had seen on. The ruins shapes that looked like Lyra, worshipped like gods. His gut twisted. If she could kill a predator twice her size now, what would she be tomorrow? Lyra stirred in her sleep and whispered a sound soft, broken, but clear. A word in his language. Protect you. Ethan froze. His throat tightened. He pulled her closer, feeling the heat of her body against his chest. Outside, something moved through the jungle, something big. The sound of trees cracking under enormous weight drifted through the air. Lyra's eyes snapped open, glowing like fire. She lifted her head and let out a low, strange hum. The air seemed to thrum with it. Ethan swallowed hard, his heart beating fast. For the first time, he wondered if the most dangerous thing on this planet wasn't hunting them at all, because maybe it was in his arms. Asterisk, the sky ripped open with fire. Ethan dropped to his knees as a burning streak tore across the clouds, screaming like an angry god. A second flare followed, then a third, lighting the alien night in flashes of silver and red. He thought it was a meteor storm until the first metal shape broke through the clouds. It wasn't a rock. It was a ship. Sleek, black, humming with power. And it wasn't alone. Ethan's stomach turned cold as he counted 3, then 5. Then more ships swooping low, their hulls glowing with crimson runes. They didn't land. They hovered, silent and watchful, like vultures circling a dying animal. Then came the sound that made his blood run dry. A low, distorted voice crackling through the air in a language he barely understood, punctuated by one word that repeated like a hammer contained the specimen. He grabbed his pack and shoved essentials inside water. Knife, flare sticks, while his heart pounded like a drum. Lyra, he hissed. The little alien was perched on the edge of the shelter, eyes fixed on the sky. They glowed like twin suns, brighter than ever. For the first time, Ethan saw fear. In her, real fear. And the drones came. Sleek metal spheres dropped from the ships, sprouting legs and blades as they hit the ground, unfolding like nightmare flowers. Red lights swept through the jungle, slicing the dark in sharp beams. They weren't searching for him. They were searching for her dot. Ethan snatched her into his arms and ran. The forest swallowed them in seconds, vines tearing at his legs, branches clawing his face. Behind him, the shelter exploded in a shower of metal and flame. The sound was like thunder shattering the earth. Lyra clung to him, trembling. He'd never felt her so small, so breakable, and yet he knew the truth now. The hunters weren't afraid of him. They were afraid of what she was becoming. Voices echoed behind him, alien. Tongues, harsh and cold, carried on static. Drones slashed through the trees, slicing trunks clean in half, their beams carving the night. Ethan darted left, then right, his lungs screaming for air, sweat pouring down his spine. Every second felt stolen. Every breath felt borrowed dot then. He saw it a crack in the ground, wide as a canyon's mouth. An ancient ruin lay below, glowing faintly with symbols older than human history. Ethan didn't think. He jumped. They hit hard, rolling across stone slick with moss. Pain shot through his shoulder, but he didn't stop. He scrambled to his feet and ran deeper into the ruins, boots pounding on marble steps cracked by time. Behind him, Lyra hissed low in her throat, a sound so strange it made his bones vibrate. The walls flickered with blue light as her glow brightened, responding to something unseen. The ruin opened into a vast hall, pillars rising like the ribs of some dead god. At its heart stood a monolith, a black spire pulsing with faint light. Carvings crawled across its surface, shapes of creatures like Lyra locked in battle, towering over armies, wreathed in fire. Ethan stared, his breath caught in his chest. The stories were here, written in stone. Her kind weren't just predators. They were kings, gods of war. Lyra slipped from his arms and walked toward the monolith, her small hands brushing its surface. The carvings glowed at her touch. A deep hum filled the air, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. Ethan felt it in his bones, thrumming. With power ancient and terrible. "Lyra," he whispered, stepping forward. "Don't." The ruin shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. Cracks spidered across the walls as the monolith blazed with light, flooding the hall in blue fire. Lyra turned to him, her eyes burning bright as suns. For one breath, she looked like the tiny creature he found in that hollow log. Then her skin split along glowing lines, her frame stretching taller, her claws lengthening like blades. She didn't look like a child anymore. She looked like something born for war. A voice roared through the ruin, not hers, not his, but something deep and ancient, echoing from the stone. Ethan clutched his ears as the drones swarmed into the hall, their red lights stabbing through the blue glow. They fired in unison, beams slicing the air. Ethan dove behind a fallen pillar as explosions shook the ground. Lyra moved like lightning. One moment she was still, the next she was ripping a drone in half, metal screaming in her. Claws, sparks rained like fireflies as she tore through machine after machine, her movements a blur of silver and blood. Ethan watched, frozen between awe and terror. This wasn't survival. This was slaughter. When the last drone fell, the hall was a graveyard of twisted metal. Smoke curled in the blue light, the air thick with the stink of burning circuits. Lyra stood at the center, her chest heaving, her claws dripping with oil that looked too much like blood. She turned slowly, her eyes locking on Ethan. For one moment, silence. Then she spoke, her voice clear now, deeper, threaded with something inhuman. "No one takes you." Ethan's throat closed. His hands trembled. He couldn't tell if he was looking at the creature he saved, or the beginning of something that would burn the galaxy. Above, the ships shifted. A low hum rolled through the ruins like thunder. They weren't retreating. They were calling reinforcements, and something answered. Deep below, the earth began to tremble. Asterisk. The ground split open like the world itself was breaking apart. Ethan barely kept his balance as stone slabs shattered under his feet, plunging into a dark abyss. A roar thundered up from the depths so deep, so raw, it rattled his bones and set his teeth on edge. It wasn't just sound. It was power. Ethan's first thought was that the ruins were collapsing. His second thought, the one that made his blood freeze, was that something had woken. Lyra stood in the center of the hall, glowing brighter than ever. Her small frame trembled, veins of molten silver pulsing under her skin like rivers of fire. The cracks along her arms widened, light spilling out like liquid metal. She didn't look like the helpless creature he found in that hollow log anymore. Her eyes burned golden now, sharp and wild, locked on the gaping hole yawning in the floor. From the darkness below came movement, slow, heavy, immense. Ethan stumbled back, heart pounding so loud it drowned out the falling debris. A shape rose through the dust, vast as a mountain, each limb armored in black plates that shimmered with alien light. Claws like swords dug into the broken stone, and a head, if you could call it, that lifted from the pit, jaws lined with glowing teeth. The beast was older than memory, bigger than anything nature should allow, its roar splitting the night into fire and fear. Ethan's lungs seized. His instincts screamed to run, but his legs wouldn't obey. He watched in horror as the creature pulled itself free, its shadow swallowing the hall. And then, like a reflection in a mirror, Lyra moved. She stepped forward, and the glow around her flared so bright it lit the ruins like a second sun. The hum in the air deepened, a vibration that set the dust dancing. Ethan pressed his palms to his ears, but it didn't help. The sound was inside. Him, in his bones, in his blood. Then she screamed. A sound not human, not anything he had ever known, high, piercing. A blade of sound that split the dark. The beast stopped. Its glowing eyes locked on her, and for a heartbeat, the world held still. Then it answered, a roar so violent the pillars cracked and fell, crushing drones under their weight. Ethan realized with sick clarity what he was witnessing. This wasn't a fight. This was a call, a challenge, a claiming. The drones swarmed again, red beams slicing the blue glow like angry spears. Explosions ripped through the hall as reinforcements poured in from every crack and broken wall. But neither Lyra nor the beast cared. They moved toward each other, slow, inevitable, as if drawn by chains of blood and history. Ethan grabbed his pack and scrambled behind the fallen pillars, every breath a ragged gasp. He had no plan, no hope. All he knew was that if Lyra lost, that monster would tear him apart without even noticing. And if she won, he wasn't sure which was worse. The clash came like the end of the world. Lyra launched first, a blur of light and fury, claws slicing through the air like living blades. She hit the beast's armored head with a force that shook the ruins. Sparks and shards flew as her claws dug deep, ripping chunks of metal like bone. The beast roared, snapping its jaws shut where she had been a second before, teeth clanging like swords. She darted under its bulk, her glowing lines burning brighter with every strike. Every tear of flesh and armor. Ethan watched in horrified awe. The fragile creature he cradled against his chest only days ago was gone. In her place was something primal, something made for war, a predator born from the bones of gods. Every move was poetry and slaughter combined, her speed defying reason, her strength bending stone like paper. But the beast wasn't weak. Its tail lashed, smashing through a pillar with a crack like thunder. The shockwave flung Ethan against the wall, stars bursting behind his eyes. When his vision cleared, the hall was chaos blue and red light clashing like storms, the sound of metal and flesh ripping apart. And then, through the madness, he saw her, Lyra, standing over the beast's broken neck, her claws sunk deep into its throat, glowing brighter than ever. The creature convulsed once, then stilled, its light flickering out like a dying star. For a long moment there was only silence, broken by the drip of black blood pooling across the stone. Lyra turned slowly, her chest heaving, her skin glowing like molten silver. She looked at Ethan, not as a child looks at a protector, not even as a friend. She looked at him like something claimed, something hers. She stepped toward him, and her voice cut through the smoke clear, strong, in perfect human words now. No one will touch you, ever. Ethan's breath caught. His hands shook. He didn't know whether to run or fall to his knees above. The ships shifted in the sky, their shadows blotting out the stars. They had seen what happened, and they weren't leaving. They were coming in force, The ground trembled again, not from the beast. This time, but from something deeper. Something that had heard the roar of its kin die. Asterisk, the sky burned with war. Ethan stood on the shattered ruins, his boots sinking into black blood and dust, staring up at a night that was no longer dark. Dozens, no, hundreds of ships hung above, like steel predators, their hulls glowing red as they moved in perfect, merciless formation. The jungle was gone. Fire had eaten it down to ash, and the air stank of smoke and ozone. This wasn't a rescue. It wasn't a hunt. It was an execution. A voice thundered through the clouds, so loud the ground shook. Contain the anomaly. Erase. The human. The words were cold, stripped of emotion, yet Ethan felt them slice through him like knives. His heart slammed against his ribs. He looked at Lyra. She wasn't the small creature he once carried in his arms. She stood on the broken spine of the beast she killed, her body glowing like a living sun. Her silver skin pulsed with light, each breath making the ruins hum with ancient power. Her claws, slick with black blood, curled like blades as her golden. Eyes scanned the sky. She didn't look afraid. She looked hungry. Ethan stepped closer, choking on the heat rolling off her. Lyra, he said softly, his voice shaking, listen to me. You can't fight them all. Her head tilted, and for a heartbeat, something soft flickered in her eyes, the same look she gave him when she was small and trembling in his hands. But then her lips curled into a slow, alien smile. They will not take you, she said, her voice deep now, resonant, almost beautiful. They will burn. Before he could speak, she leapt, the air cracked as she shot upward, faster than a missile, her glow slicing through the smoke like a comet. Ethan stumbled back as shock waves split the ground. Above, the fleets opened fire beams of white heat, raining down in blinding arcs. The jungle vanished under the blasts, ruins exploding like paper in a storm. And Lyra tore through it all. Ethan watched, frozen, as she ripped ships apart with her claws, her body moving in streaks of molten light. Explosions bloomed in the sky like dying stars, metal raining down in molten shards. She was no longer just a predator. She was a storm, a living weapon. Every strike she made sent fire roaring across the clouds. Every scream she gave turned the night into thunder, but for every ship she destroyed, 3 more rose from the clouds. The fleets weren't just here to kill her. They had prepared for her. Behemoth-class warships loomed like mountains of metal, their cannons crackling with energy that could vaporize cities. Ethan ran, ducking behind broken pillars as the earth convulsed under the bombardment. His ears rang, his skin blistering from the heat. He stumbled into what was left of his shelter and tore open his pack. Inside, under scraps of metal and ash, lay the thing he had been hiding, the weapon he found deep in the ruins. A shard of black metal carved with glowing runes, humming faintly like a heartbeat. He didn't know what it was. He only knew one thing. It could kill something like Lyra. His hands shook as he held it, the weight of choice crushing him. He had loved her, protected her, watched her grow from a fragile life into this. But now, he looked up at the sky, at the world drowning in fire because of her, and his stomach knotted with dread. If she kept going, if she lived, nothing would stop her. Nothing. A roar split the clouds. Lyra slammed into the ground hard enough to shatter stone, her body smoking from burns that sealed themselves in seconds. She crouched low, her eyes blazing. Like suns, her chest heaving with fury. Around her, the ruins glowed as ancient energies stirred, answering her presence like a choir of ghosts. The monoliths cracked, spilling rivers of light across the earth. She turned to Ethan slowly, her voice breaking the air like a blade. Come to me. He took one step back, clutching the shard behind him. His heart pounded like war drums. She saw the movement. Her eyes narrowed, golden fire burning hotter got above. The largest ship began to descend. A titan of black steel, its engines screaming. It carried enough firepower to glass the entire planet. The voice boomed again, louder this time, desperate in its command. Terminate the asset. All costs, now. Lyra smiled a cruel, radiant smile and whispered one word that froze Ethan's. Blood. Mine. The ground exploded in blue fire as she rose, her body splitting with light, her form stretching, towering, her voice rolling through the clouds like a god awakened. The galaxy would never be the same. Asterisk. The weapon pulsed in Ethan's hand like a living heart. It was warm, too warm, as if it could feel his fear. Above him, the sky burned with fire, fleets blotting out the stars, their beams carving the earth into rivers of molten stone. The air screamed with explosions. The world was ending, and at the center of it all stood Lyra. She was no longer small, no longer fragile. She towered in a halo of blue-white fire, her body split with glowing veins like cracks in a planet's crust. Her claws gleamed like forged steel, dripping with alien blood and molten metal. Her golden eyes burned brighter than the sun as she rose slowly, wings of light flaring from her back like the memory of some forgotten god. Ethan's breath hitched. He remembered the night he found her tiny, trembling in that hollow log, her eyes wide with fear. He remembered feeding her scraps of ration bar, holding her against his chest to keep her warm, whispering, "You'll be safe now." And now, because of him, nothing in the galaxy was safe. The largest warship broke through the clouds, a black leviathan, its cannons glowing with a light so bright it blinded him. It could erase continents with a single strike. And Lyra stared at it with hunger in her eyes. Lyra! Ethan screamed over the roar of the sky. She turned. Her gaze fell on him, and for one heartbeat, the fury melted. Her face softened not fully, but enough to rip him open inside. "Please," he shouted, voice raw, "stop this. You'll kill everything." She tilted her head slowly, like the girl he once knew was listening from somewhere deep inside. "They want you dead," she said, her voice deep and strange, threaded with something alien, yet still carrying a human echo. "They want to take you from me. I won't let them." Her words shook him more than the explosions. "Lyra, look at what you've become." His voice cracked. "This isn't you." Her lips curved into a smile, a soft, terrible smile. "It is what I was meant to be. For you." Something broke inside him. He tightened his grip on the shard, the weapon humming like it was alive, as if it knew its moment had come. He had one chance. One. Kill her, and maybe the galaxy would survive. Spare her, and everything would burn. Lyra stepped closer, slow, graceful, her glow making the ruins shimmer like molten glass. "Come to me," she whispered, the same words she said before, but now they sounded like a command. Her claws curled. Gently, not in threat, but as if to hold him. Ethan's breath shook. His legs trembled. The world around him was collapsing, pillars shattering, fire raining from the sky, but all he saw were her eyes. Not the light, not the hunger, but the flicker underneath. That spark he had seen when she was small and weak and whispered, "Protect you." Tears blurred his vision. He raised the weapon slowly, his hands trembling so hard he almost dropped it. Lyra stopped, her smile fading. Her eyes locked on the shard, and for the first time, she looked afraid. "Ethan," she said softly, like his name was something sacred. "Don't." His heart felt like glass grinding to dust. He stepped closer, holding the weapon between them, his voice breaking. "I loved you," he whispered. The warship above charged its main cannon. A white beam built like a star. Being born. If it fired, the planet was gone. Ethan, Lyra, everything. Lyra saw it too. Her glow flared brighter, her claws curling in fury. She would fight, and millions more would die. He couldn't let it happen. He lunged, but not at her. The shard split open in his hands, spilling light that seared his skin. Power surged through him like molten fire, burning his veins, ripping screams from his throat. He turned toward the sky, toward the Leviathan hanging above, and drove the shard into the ground. The earth screamed. Light exploded outward in a wave. That split the clouds, tore ships apart like paper, and burned the warship into a white ghost before it shattered into ash. The blast swallowed the fleets, the ruins, the jungle, everything roaring like the voice of creation. And at its heart stood Ethan, his body dissolving into light, his face calm at last dot. When the storm faded, silence fell. The world was scorched. Black, the sky empty but for drifting ash. Lyra knelt in the ruins, her glow dimmed, her body trembling as she cradled what was left of him, shadows of light fading from her arms. She pressed her forehead to his silent chest, and for the first time since she awakened, she broke. "I'll keep you safe," she whispered into the ashes, voice cracking like glass dot far above. In the cold dark between stars, warnings blazed. Across galactic channels, the anomaly lives. The human is gone. Containment failed, and somewhere in the ruins, Lyra lifted her head slowly. Her eyes still burned like suns, but this time the light in them was colder, sharper, and it whispered, "One truth to the stars. They took him from me. Now they all burn. Asterisk the end."